The alien said, "I'm too big for you." But humans whispered, "We never stopped." The human ship drifted in the darkness of space. Its metal skin was broken, full of scars from the last battle. Lights flickered weakly across the hull, like a dying heartbeat. Inside the corridors, alarms screamed, but the crew had no energy to listen anymore. They thought the end had finally come. The captain sat in his chair, his uniform torn, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Every man and woman on that ship knew they were too far from help, too deep in the void. Their fuel was almost gone. Their weapons empty, their shields dead. They whispered to each other, not in hope, but in quiet fear, a fear that they had lost. Then the silence of the stars broke. Sensors lit up, one red warning after another. Something huge had entered the system, something alive with power. The crew rushed to the windows, and there they saw it. A ship larger than anything they had ever imagined. It was not a ship. It was a fortress. It stretched across the black sky like a floating city. Its armor glowed with strange alien symbols, pulsing like veins of fire. Thousands of lights moved across its surface, like insects crawling on the skin of a giant. The human crew froze. Unable to breathe, the captain clenched his fists. He had seen this monster before. In reports, in nightmares. It was the flagship of the alien warlord who had burned whole colonies to ash. The same warlord who left only silence wherever he passed. Now he was here, face to face with the broken human ship. The alien vessel opened, releasing a sound across space. It was not a normal transmission. It was a roar, deep and violent. It shook through the hull, through the bones of the crew. They felt the voice before they heard the words. And then the words came, a booming laugh, cruel and heavy. Humans. The alien voice thundered, "Look at me." His image filled their screens. A giant covered in black armor, his eyes burning with silver fire. He stood taller than any human, his shoulders like towers, his arms like the roots of a mountain. The crew stared at him, small and weak. He leaned forward, his face close to the screen, his mouth stretched into a grin, sharp teeth glowing under the strange light. "I am too big for you," he said, his voice echoing like thunder rolling across an endless storm. The crew gasped. Some lowered their heads, but the captain stared back, refusing to blink. The alien laughed again. The sound filled with mockery. The crew expected the end to come instantly. A beam of fire, a storm of destruction. But nothing came, no weapon fired, no final strike. Instead, the alien tilted his head, his eyes narrowing, and in a whisper soft it almost vanished in the static, he said, "Try me." The words fell into the silence of the ship like a stone into still water. The crew looked at each other in shock. What did he mean? Why whisper such words? Was this a trap? Or a challenge? The captain felt the weight of those words pressing on his chest. For a moment, the crew forgot their fear. Curiosity burned through them like a spark. The alien warlord was a destroyer, a conqueror, a killer of worlds. Why would he ask them to try when he could end them in a breath? The answer was hidden, but the question was alive. The ship drifted closer to the giant vessel, like a fly circling a beast. No weapons fired, no shields raised, only silence. The human crew waited, every second a blade against their nerves. Would the alien crush them, or play with them like a hunter with prey? Suspense coiled tighter. Moment by moment, the captain stood slowly, his legs shaking but his voice steady. He looked at the screen, at the alien warlord staring back at him. He knew this moment would decide everything. Not only the fate of his ship, but perhaps the fate of humans across the stars. He whispered to himself, "If it is a challenge, then we must answer." The alien leaned back in his throne, his grin never fading. The lights of his ship glowed brighter, painting the void in red and gold. The human crew felt like ants before a god, and yet, in the silence, a strange fire began to rise inside them, Fear had not killed them yet, and now, maybe, fear would turn into defiance. The first move had not been made. The game had not begun. But one thing was certain. This was no accident, no random meeting in space. The alien had chosen them, and now the humans had to decide, would they fall to their knees? Or would they rise to the whisper that said, "Try me"? The human ship floated like a broken shadow in the endless dark. Behind it, the G a sight. Trying it, stars burned cold, and in front of it, the alien fortress glowed with living fire. The humans felt like insects caught in the gaze of a predator. Every second stretched longer, every breath heavier. The crew could not escape the truth. They were too small, too weak, too alone. The captain stood on the bridge, his face hard, but his heart pounding. He looked around at his crew, men and women who had fought beside him. Their uniforms were torn, their eyes empty of hope. Yet none of them dared to speak, because the alien's voice still echoed in their ears. "I am too big for you." It repeated in their minds like thunder. The screens showed the alien warlord. Sitting on his throne, his armor shimmered like black stone, carved with glowing scars from past battles. Each scar was a victory, each glow a memory of conquered worlds. His eyes, silver and burning, studied the humans as if they were nothing, more than toys. The crew shifted nervously, afraid to meet his gaze. The alien's ship stretched like a continent in the void. Whole armies could hide inside its hull. Whole cities could sleep inside its walls. Its weapons alone looked large enough to tear planets apart. The humans had no shields, no power, no numbers. They had only a wounded ship and a fading will. The silence was broken when the alien raised his hand. Behind him, thousands of alien soldiers appeared, lined in perfect ranks. Their bodies were covered in heavy armor, their faces hidden, their weapons glowing. They moved like one creature, chanting in a strange tongue. The sound carried through the transmission, a deep rhythm of war and victory. The human crew felt their blood run cold. This was not just one alien. This was an empire that had destroyed fleets larger than theirs, an empire that had burned human colonies into ash. Now that empire demanded their surrender. The warlord stood, his height towering beyond reason. He spread his arms as if to embrace the stars themselves. "You humans," he said, his voice like steel grinding against stone. "You are finished. You are broken. And yet you dare to float before me." His grin widened, sharp teeth flashing. "Do you not see your end standing before you?" The crew froze, fear strangling their voices. One of the younger officers whispered, "We cannot fight him. We cannot win." Her voice cracked, echoing the dread in every heart. Another soldier clenched his fists, but his hands trembled too. Much to hide it, the captain remained silent, his mind turning. The alien warlord leaned closer again, his massive face filling the screens. The crew stepped back instinctively, as if his shadow could crush them even through the glass. "You are small," he said, his words slow and heavy. "I am too big for you." The words were not just a threat. They were truth carved into their souls. And then again, that whisper, softer than before, "Try me." The humans did not know if it was mockery or a challenge. They did not know if he wished to play with them before killing them. But the whisper pierced deeper than the roar. It carried not only power, but also hunger. A hunger to test, to see, to break. The captain walked forward, closer to the screen. He placed his hand on the console, feeling the cold metal. He spoke, but only to himself. "Why does he not destroy us already?" The question spread like fire across the bridge. The crew whispered it too. Why wait? Why whisper? Why challenge? The alien warriors behind their leader raised their weapons. The glowing blades and cannons pointed toward the human ship. One wrong move, one wrong word, and fire would consume them. The crew held their breath, praying for silence. The captain's heartbeat pounded in his chest like a drum of war. The alien's eyes narrowed. Watching the humans closely, he wanted to see them bow. He wanted to see them kneel. But humans did not kneel so easily, even when broken. And that truth, small and fragile, kept them standing. Though fear pressed harder with every passing second, one engineer whispered to the captain, "Sir, if we fight, we die." Another said, "If we surrender, we die slower." The choices felt like chains tightening around them. No hope, no path, only the alien shadow above them. The captain closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the hum of the dying ship. He remembered the colonies that had already burned. He remembered the screams that traveled across the stars. He remembered that this warlord had promised to erase humankind from history. And now, standing before him, broken and outnumbered, the captain understood that surrender was not an option. The alien warlord tilted his head, waiting. He tapped his claws against the arm of his throne, the sound like thunder. "You will kneel," he said, voice rising, "or you will be erased." The crew's fear turned to despair, their faces pale as ash, but the captain felt something else stirring inside him. Fear, yes, but also anger. Anger that humans had been called small, weak insects. Anger that their spirit was mocked, their lives treated like dust. He stood taller, his voice steady though his body shook, and he whispered, almost too softly for the crew to hear, "Not yet." The crew turned toward him, their eyes wide. The captain's whisper was not fear. It was defiance. The alien warlord leaned closer once more, his silver eyes burning. He smiled, as if pleased, as if waiting for this answer. "Good," he whispered. Again, "Then try me." And the fear that had ruled the humans for so long now shifted into something else. It did not vanish, but it transformed. It became a fire, quiet but alive, the first spark of resistance against the giant who stood before them. The warlord laughed, shaking the stars with his voice. The humans clenched their fists. Their fear now sharpened into a weapon. The game had begun, though neither side had fired a single shot. And in the silence of the void, both predator and prey prepared to strike. But which was which, only time would reveal. The human ship floated. In silence, a fragile shadow beneath the burning fortress of the alien warlord. Fear still lived in every corner of the bridge, but something else now stirred in the captain's eyes. The whisper, "Try me," echoed again and again in his mind. He did not know if it was arrogance, if it was mockery, or if it was something more dangerous. But he knew one truth: if they surrendered, humanity's story ended here. The crew gathered around the captain, waiting for his orders. Some still whispered about death. Some still trembled with fear, but the captain's voice broke through, low but steady. "There is still a way," he said. "We are not finished yet." His words lit a spark in the darkness. The youngest officer frowned, her voice quiet. "Sir, our weapons are gone. Our shields are broken. Our engines can barely move." Her words were sharp, but her tone carried despair. The others nodded, afraid to believe in anything but defeat. But the captain shook his head slowly. "Strength is not always in numbers," he whispered. "Power is not always in size." He turned to the screen, where the alien warlord watched with silver-burning eyes. "He thinks we are small," the captain said, "and that is why he will lose." The crew looked at him in confusion, but he only smiled. The captain remembered the secret project hidden deep within the ship. It was not a weapon of destruction, not a gun or a cannon. It was something humans had built in secret, something simple, something clever, born not from power, but from desperation and imagination. And though the aliens saw humans as weak, they did not know of this plan. Far below the bridge, in the engine decks, engineers worked in silence. They had built devices from broken scraps of alien tech, from fragments collected in old battles, tiny machines, strange codes, things too small for an empire obsessed with size to notice. It was a weapon not of brute force, but of trickery. A weapon built by hands that refused to surrender. The captain thought of how many times humans had been outnumbered before. In history, they had faced empires greater than themselves, and every time, when strength failed, human cunning had carried the day. Now, in the black heart of space, the same truth would rise again. "We will not fight them with size," the captain said. "We will fight them with brains." The alien warlord raised a hand, as if tired of waiting. His deep voice roared across the ship once more. "Choose now. Humans," he said, "bow before me or be erased." Behind him, the alien warriors chanted louder, their weapons glowing brighter. The human crew felt the walls closing in. The captain looked at his crew, one by one. Their eyes were filled with fear, but also with something new. A question: could they truly resist? Could they truly strike back? He nodded firmly. "Yes," he said, "we can." The silence grew heavy. Then he added, "If you trust me." The first officer stepped forward, his jaw set. "What is the plan, Captain?" he asked, his voice trembling but determined. The captain did not speak it out loud, not with alien eyes watching. Instead, he gave orders quietly. One by one, divert power to the lower decks. Release the drones. Begin the sequence. The engineers below moved fast. Tiny drones, no larger than a human hand, slipped free from hidden chambers. They were silent, cloaked against sensors. Invisible in the shadows of space, they drifted like dust across the void, toward the massive alien vessel, unseen and ignored. Alien warlord laughed again. His voice thundered across the bridge, shaking the air. "Do you really think silence can save you?" He mocked. His teeth glinted in the strange light. "You are already dead. You just do not know it yet." But the captain only smiled faintly, for he knew what the alien did not. Humans had always survived by being underestimated, by being overlooked, by being ignored until it was too late. And now, that same truth was unfolding here. On the alien fortress, alarms remained silent. The giant ship did not notice the specks crawling onto its hull. Too small, too weak, too unworthy of attention. The alien warriors sang their victory chants, blind to the tiny shadows around them. The warlord leaned back in his throne, certain of triumph. The captain turned to his crew. "Do not show fear," he whispered. "Let him believe we are broken." The crew nodded, hiding their fire, hiding their hope. They lowered their heads, letting the alien think they were surrendering. But inside, their hearts beat faster, stronger, waiting for the moment. The alien grinned wider, seeing them bow. "Yes," he growled, "this is the truth of humans." He raised his clawed hand, ready to demand their final submission. But in the silence beneath his ship's skin, the human drones had already begun their work, clawing, cutting, slipping into weak points in the alien armor. The fortress was vast, but no armor was perfect. Every giant had cracks, and humans knew how to find them. The drones spread like ants, crawling into vents, wires, and shadowed corners. They were too small to destroy, but they could disrupt, they could bite, sting, and bleed the giants slowly. The captain's heart raced as he watched his silent army move. The alien still believed in his size, still believed in his strength. He did not see the danger, because pride had blinded him, and that blindness was the sharpest weapon humans carried. Not guns, not bombs, but the arrogance of their enemies. Crew exchanged nervous glances. Some could not believe the plan would work. But others, those who knew human history, those who knew human stubbornness, they felt a strange calm, because this was the human way. Always, the alien warlord leaned forward once more, his voice filled with rage and triumph. "I gave you the chance to bow," he roared. "Now I will take your lives." He raised his hand to give the order, but the captain did not flinch. He stared into the silver eyes of the alien giant, and for the first time, the captain's lips curved into a smile. Not a smile of surrender, but a smile of defiance. "Try me," he whispered back. The alien froze for a brief second. His grin faltered. His silver eyes narrowed. Had the human truly repeated his words? Was this defiance or madness? The warlord leaned closer, intrigued, and in that moment, the humans knew the game had changed. The fear had not vanished, but it had become a weapon. A weapon hidden behind bowed heads and trembling hands. A weapon waiting to strike. The captain whispered again to his crew, "Hold steady, hold strong." They nodded, their eyes burning brighter than before, and though the alien fortress stood like a god before them, the humans knew the truth. The first step of the hidden plan was already complete. The giant was already bleeding, and soon he would know it. The alien warlord's fortress burned with golden light across the black sea of stars. Inside the human ship, silence hung heavy, but behind that silence, a storm was building. The tiny drones had already slipped into the veins of the alien vessel. Unseen, unheard, they crawled through wires, reactors, and power grids. They were too small for alien eyes, but their work had already begun. The captain stood at the center of the bridge, his hands gripping the console. Every heartbeat felt like thunder in his chest. Every second stretched longer. But he held his gaze steady on the warlord's silver eyes. The alien leaned closer, amused by this fragile defiance. "You humans," he growled, "do you still not understand? Your end is already written." Behind him, rows upon rows of alien soldiers lifted their weapons. Their armor shimmered. Their chants filled the air with promises of victory. The fortress itself seemed alive, pulsing with raw power. One strike from its cannons could rip the human ship into pieces. Yet the warlord waited, savoring the moment like a predator toying with prey. The crew felt their throats tighten. One wrong move, and they would be ash scattered in the void. But beneath the surface, deep in the shadows, the drones continued their work. Small sparks flickered inside the alien fortress, invisible for now. But soon, those sparks would grow into fire. The captain leaned forward, his voice quiet but sharp. "You think we are small," he said. "You think we are weak." The alien chuckled, his laughter shaking the air. "You are small," he thundered, "and I will prove it now." He raised his claw, and the order was given. The alien fortress fired. A beam of golden fire erupted from its cannons, carving across the void. The human crew gasped, their eyes wide, but at the last moment, the captain shouted, "Evasive pattern." The ship twisted, slow but sharp, the beam missing by inches. The crew cheered weakly, but the captain did not smile. He knew this was only the beginning. The fortress fired again and again, beams of death tearing through the dark. The human ship danced desperately, dodging, scraping, trembling with each movement. The crew's hands moved fast, every command fueled by fear and fire. Then the captain whispered, "Now." Deep inside the alien vessel, one drone cut a wire, another overloaded a circuit. For a split second, one cannon of the fortress flickered. The beam sputtered, missing its mark. The warlord's silver eyes narrowed. He slammed a claw against his. "Throne, find it," he roared. "Find what they are doing." But the alien crew found nothing. Their scanners showed only empty space. The tiny drones were ghosts, shadows too small for them to see. The human captain watched closely. One mistake could reveal the trick. One wrong signal could end everything. He whispered to his crew, "Patience. Wait for the right moment." The fortress fired again, beams slicing closer. The ship trembled, alarms screamed, but still they survived. The alien warlord laughed again. "Do you call this fighting?" He mocked, "You are only running." His voice shook the walls of the human bridge. The crew's fear sharpened, but the captain's eyes remained calm. "Running?" He whispered, "No." Baiting, he turned sharply. "Engage the field." The engineers obeyed, and the ship's broken engines flared. They pushed the ship toward the asteroid belt nearby. Rocks floated silently in the void, massive, cold. Waiting, the alien warlord frowned, but followed. Curious, the fortress moved behind them, its enormous mass casting shadows across the asteroids. Beams of golden fire smashed into rock, breaking asteroids into dust. But the human ship kept weaving, slipping between the giants of stone. The fortress followed. Too large, too heavy, too arrogant, the captain whispered to his crew. He thinks size is victory. They nodded, gripping their stations tightly. The ship turned sharply, darting into the densest part of the field. The fortress pressed in, struggling to fit. Inside the alien vessel, alarms began to rise. Their cannons struggled to target the human ship through the shifting rocks. Some beams struck asteroids instead, shattering them. Fragments smashed against the fortress's armor, leaving scratches across its glowing hull. The warlord's grin began to fade. "Crush them," he roared, his voice shaking the walls. Fortress opened more cannons, firing wildly into the asteroid field. The humans braced, but the captain smiled faintly, for he knew the drones had already weakened some of the systems, and with each reckless strike, the alien vessel bled a little. "More," the first officer gasped, pointing at the screen. "Sir? Look!" On the side of the fortress, one cannon failed completely. It sparked, shorted, and went dark. The warlord growled, silver eyes burning hotter. But the captain leaned closer to the screen. "You wanted us to try," he whispered. "So, now we will." He gave the order, and the human ship fired. Not heavy weapons, for they had none, but small missiles, aimed not at strength, but at weakness. The missiles struck the damaged sections of the fortress. Tiny explosions rippled across the alien hull, insignificant compared to the size of the giant, but enough to sting, enough to show the first crack. The crew cheered, their fear breaking into hope. The alien warlord roared, his voice filling the void. "You dare!" he bellowed. "You dare strike me!" He stood tall, his massive frame glowing with fury. "You are nothing, and yet you defy me." His words shook the screens, but the humans stood firm. The fortress fired again, beams tearing through the field. Asteroids shattered. The human ship shook violently. Sparks burst across the bridge. Smoke filled the air, but still the ship held. And still, the captain whispered, "Hold steady." The drones deep inside the alien vessel reached the core systems. They crawled into reactors, into communication relays. They began their final sequence, slow and silent. The alien engineers, panicked, searching for shadows they could not see. The warlord roared again, his fury shaking the halls. The human crew knew the danger was not over. The fortress still towered above them, its power still greater, but now the giant was bleeding. Now the arrogance was cracking, and in that crack, the humans saw hope. The captain looked at his crew, his voice steady. "This is only the first step," he said. "The fight has just begun." The crew nodded, their eyes burning brighter. They were no longer only afraid, they were ready. The alien fortress pulled back slightly. Its cannons flickered, its systems sparked. The warlord growled low, his grin gone, his eyes sharper than ever. "You have made your choice, humans," he whispered. "Now you will learn what it means to defy me." The crew braced for the storm that was coming. Their ship was still broken, their weapons still weak, but now they had struck the giant. And once struck, even a giant must bleed. The clash had only begun, and in the silence after the echoes of fire, one truth stood clear. Humans had faced the first blow, and they had not fallen. Not yet. The asteroid field was no longer silent. Fragments of rock floated through the void like broken teeth. Everywhere, dust clouds shimmered with the glow of shattered stone. The human ship drifted among them, battered but alive, and across the dark horizon, the alien fortress loomed, It had taken its first wound. One cannon dead, several systems flickering. It was still massive, still terrifying. But now it was bleeding. And for the first time in countless battles, the alien warlord felt it, the faint sting of defiance. He stood from his throne, his enormous figure casting long shadows across the command chamber. His silver eyes blazed like fire against steel. The alien warriors around him grew silent, their chants broken. They had expected an easy victory. One strike to erase the humans, but the humans had not fallen. The warlord's claws scraped against the throne as he leaned forward. "Find them," he growled, his voice low but burning with fury. His officers scrambled, scanning the void, but the asteroids twisted the signals, scattering the sensors. The humans were hidden, and that truth dug like a blade into alien pride. On the human bridge, smoke filled the air. The crew coughed, their hands shaking, but their eyes carried something new. Not only fear, but fire. They had struck the giant, and the giant had felt it. The captain stood at the center, his face calm, though his heart pounded like drums. He looked at his people. "Broken but unyielding. This is proof," he said quietly. "Proof that he can bleed." The crew nodded, the spark of hope igniting brighter. They leaned over their stations, ready for more. The drones continued their silent work inside the sea. Alien fortress. They had burrowed deeper, into systems no alien thought could be touched. Engines, reactors, power grids. The alien ship was vast, but even vastness had cracks, and humans had always known how to find them. One drone crawled into a coolant line. Another slipped into a sensor relay, tiny machines too small to notice, too stubborn to stop. Every second they worked, the fortress grew weaker. Every second they worked, the alien's fury grew stronger. The warlord roared, his voice echoing like thunder across metal walls. "How can this be?" he demanded. His officers bent low, trembling. "They are." "Too small, Lord," one admitted. "Our scans do not." "Find them." The warlord's hand struck the officer, sending him crashing to the ground. "Too small?" He growled, his teeth bared in rage, his silver eyes narrowing. There is no such thing as too small. But even as he spoke, the truth gnawed at him. Something tiny, something unseen, was tearing at his giant vessel. The human captain watched from his broken bridge. He could see the alien pacing, his fury visible even across the distance. And the captain whispered to his crew, "He does not understand yet." The words felt sharp, almost cruel. The first officer frowned, his hands tight on the console. "Sir, he will hit us harder now," he said. The captain nodded slowly. "Yes, he will," he replied. "But that is the point." The crew exchanged glances, not yet understanding. Then it came. The fortress fired again, beams of golden energy tearing through the asteroid field. The humans braced, their ship shaking violently as rocks shattered all around them. But some of those beams missed, striking fragments of asteroids instead. The impacts scattered more debris, blocking the alien's own line of fire. The warlord's growl turned to a roar of frustration. His massive claws gripped the edges of his throne. "You cannot run forever," he thundered. His voice shook even the humans on their bridge. But the captain only whispered, "We are not running." The alien fortress pressed deeper into the asteroid belt. Its massive size turned against it. Every move scraped its hull. Against stone, every cannon blast broke more rock into dust that clouded its sensors. The fortress, once untouchable, was stumbling inside the alien chamber. Officers spoke in hushed voices. "Lord, the humans are controlling the field," one said nervously. The warlord spun, his silver eyes burning. "No," he growled. "They are rats hiding in shadows." But doubt flickered in his voice. On the human ship, the captain smiled faintly. "Let him believe." "Eat?" he whispered. He turned to his crew, his voice sharper. "Release the second wave." The engineers obeyed. More drones spilled into the void, tiny shapes hidden among drifting stone. They clung to asteroid fragments, riding them like shadows. Then, slowly, they slipped across the black and onto the alien fortress again. The giant never saw them. The fortress trembled as another system failed. Lights flickered across its massive hull. One engine sputtered, coughing flames into the dark. Inside, alarm screamed. Alien officers shouted in panic. The warlord roared. Find them! Crush them! But his orders found no answer. The enemy was too small to strike, too clever to catch. His empire was built on power, on size, on strength. But here, size was turning into weakness, and the humans were turning weakness into victory. D. He turned to his soldiers. Prepare the swarm, he ordered. From the depths of the fortress, new doors opened. Hundreds of smaller alien craft poured out, glowing like fireflies in the dark. They swarmed through the asteroid belt, searching. For the human ship, the crew gasped, fear tightening their throats again. The captain's jaw clenched, but his eyes stayed calm. This is the test, he whispered. If we survive this wave, he will fear us. The crew straightened, ready for the storm. The alien swarm spread out, firing beams of light through the rocks. Asteroids shattered, dust filled the void. The human ship twisted. Diving through narrow cracks in the field, the swarm followed. Faster, hungrier, the crew's hands flew across controls, their breath sharp and fast. Then the captain spoke again. Activate the charges, he ordered. Deep within the asteroids, hidden devices blinked to life. Explosives planted long ago. Secret weapons waiting for this moment. The swarm closed in. Unaware of the trap, the captain whispered, Now. The charges exploded. Asteroids shattered in massive bursts. Fire and stone raining across the swarm. Alien ships broke apart, torn into pieces by their own speed. The swarm screamed into chaos. The human crew cheered wildly. The alien warlord's silver eyes widened for the first time. Shock flashed across his face. He had expected prey, but the prey had teeth, and those teeth had just bitten deep. His roar shook the chamber, his fury unmatched. Impossible. He thundered, but inside him, beneath the fury, something new began to grow. Not only anger, not only hatred, but fear. The fortress shook as more systems failed. The swarm scattered, half destroyed, half fleeing. The humans, still broken, still weak, had stood their ground. And for the first time, the warlord whispered to himself, They are smaller, but dangerous. The human captain watched him, their eyes locked across the void. And the captain spoke softly. This is only the beginning. The warlord's silver eyes narrowed, but the whisper still echoed in his ears. Dangerous. He repeated to himself. The alien empire had faced many enemies, but none had ever dared this. None had ever struck like this. And for the first time, the warlord felt something cold in his chest, a shadow he had never known before. That shadow was human. The battlefield was burning. Asteroids shattered into dust. Fragments of fire drifted like sparks across the Black Sea. The alien swarm was broken, torn apart by explosions. But the human ship was broken too, its hull cracked, its engines coughing smoke. The crew clung to their stations, alive but bleeding. The alien fortress still loomed like a mountain of steel. Even wounded, even bleeding, it was massive, unstoppable. Its glowing lights returned. Cannons charging once again. The warlord stood at the center of his chamber, his silver eyes sharp with rage. The word dangerous still echoed in his mind, but danger alone would not save the humans. They were out of drones, out of missiles, almost out of time. Their ship trembled under every movement. Their shields were gone, their power nearly drained. And yet the captain stood tall, calm. As the void itself, he turned to his crew, their faces pale but their eyes fierce. This is the moment, he whispered. If we strike now, we may live. If we hesitate, we die. The crew nodded, silent but ready. The warlord raised his hand. End this, he growled. His cannons hummed with deadly fire, the fortress preparing for the killing blow. The crew held their breath, but the captain whispered, "Wait." The fortress fired. Golden beams ripped across the void, striking asteroids, ripping fragments into storms. The human ship twisted, scraping through rocks, flames trailing from its hull. The crew screamed as sparks exploded across the bridge. But still, the ship held. The captain's eyes burned. He had one last card to play, a move so reckless, so desperate, it could either save them or destroy them completely. The final gambit. And it was ready. He leaned closer to his console, whispering, "Bring up the core." The engineers gasped, their faces white. "Sir, if we touch the core directly," one stammered. "It will kill us," another added. The captain nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "but if we do nothing, he kills us anyway." The crew froze, their breaths sharp. They knew what he meant. They were about to turn their own ship into a weapon. The alien fortress fired again. The human ship jolted violently, hull, plates tearing away. One officer fell to the ground, coughing blood, but he raised his hand, whispering, "Do it, Captain." The others followed, voices trembling but firm. The captain looked at them all, his voice steady. "Then we gamble everything." He turned sharply. "Divert all power to the core." The ship groaned, lights flickered, engines went dark. All that remained was the heartbeat of the core. Glowing brighter and brighter, the alien warlord watched, his silver eyes narrowing. "What are they doing?" He growled. His officers stammered, confused. "Lord, their ship is collapsing. Power levels dropping. They cannot last." The warlord grinned, sharp teeth flashing. "Then let them burn," he said. He raised his claws, preparing to fire the final strike. But deep inside the human ship, the core flared. It was unstable, dangerous, and now it was alive. The captain whispered, "Prepare for the run." The human ship twisted, its engines screaming as power surged through broken wires. The ship moved faster than it had in hours. Smoke trailed, fire burst, but it lunged straight toward the fortress. The crew clung to their stations, their voices silent, only the sound of the core filled the air. The alien warlord roared in laughter. "Fools," he thundered. "Do you think you can ram me?" His officers laughed too, certain of victory. Their fortress was massive, their armor thicker than mountains. One broken human ship could never pierce it. But the captain's whisper echoed in the smoke. "We are not trying to pierce you." He looked at his crew, eyes sharp. "We are trying to get inside you." The ship lunged closer, closer. The fortress fired again, beams cutting across the dark. One tore through the human ship's side, ripping metal like paper. Screams filled the bridge as flames erupted. But still, the ship surged forward, faster. The crew refused to stop. The warlord snarled. "They rushed to their death," he growled. But then his eyes widened. The humans were not aiming for the armor. They were aiming for the docking bay. The fortress's bay doors loomed ahead, massive gates designed for fleets of alien ships. But they were already weakened, flickering from drone sabotage. The human ship smashed through, fire and sparks exploding across the chamber. The fortress trembled with the impact. The human crew screamed as they crashed inside. Metal twisted, alarms blared, but they were inside the fortress now, the warlord's silver. Eyes burned with shock. "How?" he whispered. The captain stood, smoke and blood on his face. He whispered to his crew, "This is where it ends." They nodded, their hands moving across consoles. The core hummed louder, brighter. It was ready to explode. The alien officers panicked, shouting, "Lord, they are inside. They will overload." The warlord roared, his voice shaking the chamber. "Stop them." But his soldiers were too late. The humans had locked their course. The core burned brighter than a star. The captain closed his eyes, whispering, "For every world you burned, for every life you crushed." The crew whispered too, their voices joining. "For humanity." The fortress shook violently. The warlord's silver eyes widened. And then silence. The core erupted, not as a weapon of destruction against the void, but as a storm inside the fortress itself. The explosion ripped through docking bays, through engines, through reactors. A giant bled fire from within. The alien warlord roared, his claws tearing into his throne, his empire's pride, his fortress, his power. All of it shuddered, cracking, bleeding. The giant was falling, and it was humans who had made it fall. On the human bridge, alarms screamed, flames roared. The crew held on, their ship breaking apart. But the captain stood firm, his voice steady. "We are still alive," he whispered. And against all odds, they were. The explosion had crippled the fortress, but the human ship, though torn and shattered, floated free. Barely alive, but alive. The crew gasped in disbelief. They had gambled everything, and somehow they had survived. The alien warlord stared at the screens. His silver eyes burned with fury, but behind the fury, something darker stirred. Not only anger, not only hatred, but respect. He whispered, "Himself, they are too small." His claws tightened against the throne, "But they are not weak." The word, "Try me," echoed in his mind again. The crew on the human bridge sat in silence. Their ship was nearly dead, their bodies broken, but their spirits burned brighter than fire. They had struck the giant where it hurt most, and the giant had felt fear. The captain whispered, "This was the final gamble." His crew nodded, tears in their eyes, and as smoke filled the bridge, one truth stood clear. Humans were not finished yet. The battlefield was silent. Asteroids drifted. In smoke and fire, broken fragments floating through the endless dark. The alien fortress bled from 1,000 wounds. Flames poured from its engines. Sparks cascaded across its broken armor. The giant that once stood untouchable now trembled. The human ship floated nearby, a ghost of metal and fire. Its hull cracked, its lights dim, its engines barely alive. Inside, the crew clung to life, coughing through smoke, bleeding from wounds. But their eyes burned with something stronger than pain. They had done the impossible. The alien warlord stood in his chamber, his claws gripping the broken edges of his throne. His silver eyes blazed with fury, but also with something new, something he had never felt in centuries of conquest. A cold shadow, a truth he could not deny. Fear. He stared at the screens showing the small human ship. It was nothing compared to his fortress. A speck, a broken insect, and yet that speck had pierced him, wounded him, made him bleed. The thought twisted in his chest like a blade. The human captain stood on his bridge, his face dark with smoke. Blood streaked down his cheek, but his eyes glowed with fire. He leaned forward, whispering, "Open the channel." The crew obeyed, their hands trembling. The screen flickered, and the alien warlord's face appeared. Massive, furious, scarred with light, his teeth bared, his silver eyes sharp as blades. The crew flinched at his presence, but the captain did not. The warlord growled, his voice like thunder in the void. "You dare strike me," he said. "You dare wound what cannot be wounded." His claws tightened, the sound scraping like steel against stone. "You should not exist." The captain stared at him, silent for a moment. Then he whispered, "But we do." The crew looked at him, stunned by the simplicity. The warlord snarled, but the words cut deeper than any blade. "You are too small." The alien growled again, his voice shaking the chamber. "I am too big for you." His silver eyes blazed with defiance, with pride. "You are insects, weak and fragile." His voice thundered like the end of worlds. The captain stepped closer to the screen, his face calm, his voice steady. "You are big," he whispered, "but size is not strength." His words echoed through the smoke-filled bridge. The alien leaned forward, his teeth bared. "Then what is strength, human?" he demanded. "What is it, if not size, if not power, if not conquest?" His claws slammed into the throne, shaking the chamber. "Tell me, before I crush you." The captain did not blink. He stood tall, even as his ship trembled, and he whispered back, "Strength is standing when no one believes you can." The crew's eyes widened, their hearts pounding. "Strength is fighting when you have nothing left." The captain continued, "Strength is refusing to bow, even when the giant towers above you." His voice sharpened, rising with fire. "Strength is spirit, and that is why you fear us?" The alien warlord froze. The words struck deeper than missiles, deeper than fire. For the first time in his endless conquests, someone had spoken to him not with fear, but with truth. And truth cut sharper than any blade. The crew felt the silence grow heavy. Every heartbeat thundered in their ears. Would the alien strike? Would he burn them? Or had the words pierced too deep? The captain stood tall. Waiting, the warlord leaned closer, his silver eyes narrowing. For a moment, the fire of rage dimmed. For a moment, he was silent. Then, slowly, he whispered, "Try me." But this time, his voice was different. Not filled with arrogance, not filled with mockery, but heavy, quiet, almost respectful. The words carried weight. The words carried truth. The human crew stared, stunned. The alien warlord, the conqueror of worlds, the destroyer of fleets, the killer of billions, had whispered not in laughter, but in respect. The captain nodded slowly, his voice steady as he whispered back, "We already did?" The silence stretched, heavy as the stars. Then the warlord leaned back in his throne, his claws loosened, his silver eyes burning. He stared at the humans, not as insects, not as prey, but as warriors, as equals. The crew gasped, unable to believe what they were seeing. The warlord's expression shifted. Not a smile, not a snarl, but something in between. Something new, for the first time. The alien spoke not as a conqueror, but as a challenger. "You are dangerous," he whispered. "Too dangerous to be ignored." His words rumbled like storms. The captain's voice cut back, sharp as a blade. "Then remember this," he said. "Humans are small. Yes. Humans are fragile. Yes. But humans never stop." The warlord's eyes narrowed. The words twisted inside him. Heavy, unshakable, he whispered them back to himself. "Humans never stop." The truth burned like fire. The fortress trembled again. Systems failing. Fire spreading. The alien officers panicked, shouting, "Lord, the ship cannot hold." The warlord raised a claw, silencing them. His eyes remained locked on the humans. His voice low but heavy. "You win this day," he growled. "But the war is not over." The captain's eyes burned. "Then come again," he whispered. "And we will answer the same way." The crew's hearts thundered. The warlord growled. But his fury no longer blinded him. It sharpened him. For the first time in his life, he had found an enemy he respected. For the first time in his life, he had found a fight worth remembering. He whispered once more, softer than ever, "Try me." And then the channel cut, the fortress shuddered, pulling away, engines sputtering, flames bleeding, but it retreated into the black, its shadow fading into the stars. The humans watched in silence. Their ship was dying, their bodies broken, but their spirits burned brighter than ever. They had faced the giant, and they had not fallen. The captain sank into his chair, exhausted. His crew slumped around him, some crying, some laughing, but all alive, all unbroken. The silence stretched across the bridge, until the youngest officer whispered, "Sir, did we truly win?" The captain's lips curved into a faint smile. "No," he whispered. "We survived, and survival. In the heart of the void, against the greatest warlord the stars had ever known. Was victory enough? The crew closed their eyes, letting the silence hold them. But in that silence, the truth burned. Humans were small. Humans were fragile. But humans were endless. And one whisper echoed across the stars. Forever. Try me.